Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 143 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network, or the DAP Network, if you will. And I just did. But if you're watching us live on YouTube or watching a replay on YouTube, feel free to come in here and enjoy. We've got a great guest tonight. But before we do that, obviously, I got to introduce myself, Andrew Hall at Andrew Hall FF, and my co-host tonight, Rocky Petrella. How are you tonight, Rocky?
That's me. Hey Andrew, how you doing?
Hey.
I'm doing pretty good tonight. Getting on a little more often, I think this month. I was on a couple weeks ago. I think we're all going to be on next week, right?
Yeah, next week is going to be our FMAT Spectacular. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, but I'm very much looking forward to tonight podcasting with Howard here. This should be a fun time.
That's right. And if you've read the title, if you're looking in on the YouTubes, you already see him here. Howard Bender, the one and only from Fantasy Alarm. How are you tonight, Howard?
I'm doing real well. Thank you so much for inviting me, guys. A pleasure to be here and psyched to bash on some rookies.
Oh, that's all we do on this show, really. Rookies and running backs, we just bash all the time. I mean, I don't want to get too mean too soon. I guess we have to kind of move into it a little bit. I mean, I put on the show sheet, obviously the first thing we always talk about is news, but I don't feel like there really was any news. Did I miss anything major? I mean, Antonio Brown is going to play in the Arena League. Is that news?
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's new to me. Breaking news right here.
I got like some sort of sleeper alert or something, and I'm just like, that sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, a couple weeks ago, he was talking about playing for the Ravens. Nobody believed that, right? And then it was like, oh, now he's playing for an Arena League. I believe that. That kind of makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's that time of year. This is rookie draft season, kind of pivoting into dynasty startup season. So really not a lot of news, thank goodness. That usually means no injuries, no off-season, OTA injuries or anything like that. Knock on wood, that's not going to happen, but always seems like it does. Anyway, we're going to go see our evening. Tonight we're going to be talking about rookie wide receivers and tight ends. We did quarterbacks and running backs last week, and I think this week with the wide receiver, tight end, the pass-catching group, we were kind of talking about it before we started. It feels a little underwhelming, right? We were all kind of hyping up this 23 class as we were leading into it, and 2023 picks are gold and all of this stuff. And I don't know, I'm a little disappointed, I guess. I mean, Howard, I'll kick it to you first. In general, what do you think about this rookie class? Is it holding up to the standard, or you kind of like me, just a little bit meh?
Yeah, I'm kind of meh with it, and I don't know if it's the level of talent with these players. Or if it's more the landing spots, like maybe if Jackson Smith-Njigba went somewhere other than, to be the wide receiver 3 behind Lockett and Metcalf, maybe if Jahmyr Gibbs went to some place that, was going to feature him more and not, pair him up with David Montgomery. So, I think that's kind of where we're at, where we're all like, yeah, give me some Bijan Robinson. There's a little bit of love for Jordan Addison. Well, there's a little bit more than just a little love, but there's love for Jordan Addison where he is. And then, you're just kind of, you're throwing darts. There are pros and cons to everybody else. Nothing too exciting, to be honest.
Yeah, I think this is,
Yeah,
especially where we were like a year ago, 6 to 8 months ago. This class to me is very underwhelming. And I haven't held back on that. We know we've talked about it all through 2022 that these picks, like you said, like a random 2023 first was like gold. You could get anything for it. And this is just an average class at best. I think like there's some good high end talent. And we have at least a few more quarterbacks than last year. And since we're a super flex pod, but we were talking before the show, and I again said this multiple times on here on Trade Addicts. Like after 108, 109 ish, it's just like, yeah, okay. It's like some of these guys might have a shot to be semi-relevant, but I'm not super excited about taking anybody.
Yeah, and as much as I want to kind of bash landing spots, because it feels like a lot of the landing spots are just kind of like stepping on rakes, like, oh man, like that guy went to, like JSN went to Seattle. They've already got a couple players, and Lockett just got re-signed. Like,
and speaking of Seattle, I love Zach Charbonnet, and then that just killed me when he went to Seattle.
Definitely going to mention that one too, right? Like Seattle's just killing us with some of this. And then, I mean, Atlanta taking Bijan makes sense. I get that. They didn't take a quarterback. So now I'm like, well, how good is that team going to be? Like, I think Ritter's going to be fine, but it just seems like every single thing that could have gone wrong went wrong almost. But I also think it's always worth repeating that we had the same kind of thought about AJ Brown, right? AJ Brown went to Tennessee. It was a terrible landing spot, and it was going to be terrible, and nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, he ended up being a stud anyway. So I'm really curious to see what happens for some of these players. If Jordan Addison can live up to the hype and be that true number 2 beside Justin Jefferson. I don't think he overtakes Justin Jefferson. That'd be crazy. But I mean, if he did, you heard it here first, I guess, right? We're breaking that. But I'm not betting any money on it. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I feel like this class is a little underwhelming. And I think also it explains, I think in some cases why or how at least trading for picks can be risky. You feel like they're going to accrue in value and that they're going to be a standard thing that they're not going to decrease in value. I mean, 110 decreased in value a ton in the week after the draft. I mean, that 110 was a first round pick, and then it was 110, and it was like, oh, that teardrop is pretty serious. Do I take Kendry Miller there? Do I take Charbonnet there? Like, just those picks, none of them feel good. And so, again, I just think it bears reiterating, like, draft picks are definitely an asset you can move. Don't be afraid to move them.
Yeah, I think almost that entire second half of the first round almost is decrease. Like you say, picks never decreasing, but they did decrease in value because of how hyped the 23 class was. And it's kind of put in the back of my mind. If we get another like hyped class a year to 2 years, which this was back in 2021, I think people were talking about 23 first. And if that happens, I am going to be selling those picks because it's not a given that unless you're getting, unless your pick ends up to 101 to 105 or 6, that it's not a given. I think that those picks are going to increase in value if it's as overhyped as the 23 class was.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it too earlier, Rocky. We got a lot of good quarterbacks in this class, but that was last week. We're talking receivers, and the number one overall receiver by the consensus is JSN. Howard, what do you think about Jackson Smith and Jigba? Is he the real deal? Does he deserve the one spot? Is it drastically? Is there a big gap, I guess, between him and the other guys? What do you think?
Well, I think he definitely projects long term as a very talented NFL wide receiver. Again, the problem is that it's going to be very tough to see how he gets weaved in. You've got Seattle, which is the only person who likes to run for the football as much as Arthur Smith is Pete Carroll. I mean, granted, and that's what I find kind of interesting. Last year, I think Geno Smith had the 6th most pass attempts in the NFL, which was incredibly surprising. If you've got Kenneth Walker and you also drafted Zach Charbonnet and you've got a run first mentality, like, I don't know. Are you moving, are you going to move DK Metcalf at some point? Where is it going to be? So I worry that we're just not going to see Jackson Smith-Njigba develop like he should develop. He should be a number 2 right now on an offense, right? He should have been like if Minnesota took him. Right? It could have been like, Jefferson and then, Smith-Njigba, and Njigba, he would have had a fantastic season because all the tough coverage is on, this is why we love Jordan Addison, right? It's like TJ Hawkinson's not going to get all of Adam Thielen's vacated targets. So
I agree.
Like that's why we're in on it. So, that's the one thing that worries me about Smith-Njigba also is that am I going to take him number 1 as the wide receiver in a dynasty draft because of his talent? When's he going to pop really in the NFL? And is that going to be year 2, year 3? Do I really want to wait that long?
Yeah, it could be tricky. Rocky, what do you think about JSN? Definitely the consensus 1. I mean, he's the number 1 for you too, I assume, right?
Yeah, I'm taking him as the wide receiver 1 in the class because of the talent. But I'm with Howard. It's dicey. Like I do think that I've also been like and this is not a humble brag or anything, but I do have a lot of picks in that 109 to 112 range. And I've been taking a lot of Charbonnet at the very end because I do think he's a value and I do believe in that talent. And also because I do think they're going to run a lot. I think that's why you pick Charbonnet. And when you already have Walker and Pete Carroll, like Howard said, we've known is always loved to run the ball. So, it is hard to see a path for him to be super, especially in his rookie year, but even for the next 2 years, like I don't think they have a good salary cap out on Lockett until after the 24 season.
No, and they just re-signed him to a really good deal. I don't think they're going to try to.
I don't think they can. Even after this season, I don't think they can cut him very easily, even if they wanted to. So it's hard to envision a path where he's even the clear second best option on the team. I mean, talent wise, he's very, very good, and at this stages in their careers, you would think he could surpass Lockett, but it's still very dicey. But like you mentioned AJ Brown earlier, and I have to go on the talent, and he's definitely the most talented receiver in the class. So I am still taking him as the wide receiver 1, but that would be like 106 or something like that after the quarterbacks and the first couple running backs are off the board.
Yeah, it's an odd spot to be like, well, I guess I'll take the best receiver. It's a weird feeling, you know what I mean? Like, I guess I'll take the number 1 receiver here. I don't feel happy about it, you know.
Yeah,
like,
I don't think anybody expects him to be the top producing rookie receiver. So
yeah, and so that's actually a good pivot. So the next 2 obviously are Addison and Johnston, and they're kind of in a tier of their own, I think, in most places. But if you think about it, we've got JSN kind of behind Metcalf and Lockett. You've got Jordan Addison playing for Minnesota behind Justin Jefferson. And then you got Quentin Johnson playing behind, in theory, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen in LA and the Chargers. So all 3 of these guys being, the top 3 receivers, none of them are going to be a solid wide receiver 1 on their own team, at least not for a couple of years, it looks like. So Howard, I'll kick it to you first. I mean, this is kind of I would say the most important question that some people have is, which do you prefer, Addison or Johnston? Because there's some value and some logic in either way, but which one do you prefer?
I prefer Addison right now, primarily, with every league being PPR. Like, my grandpa plays standard still, but I mean, we'll see what happens.
I'm in one.
But I mean, so in a PPR format, again, you're talking about a high octane passing offense. We all expect them to cut bait with Dalvin Cook. Yeah, Madison is there, but that they want to throw the ball. That's just the way that the offensive scheme is set up over there. So to me, Addison is he's that, come on, don't we live in an era of instant need for an instant gratification?
That's right.
So why can't I just be in win now mentality, say, forget JSN. I'm going to take Addison with my first pick, because Addison's going to be the guy who's going to see targets this year. He's going to be involved in that offense. And if he's just, even if he's just a chain mover, he'll get his touchdowns. But, I think that's definitely where we want to kind of sit. With Johnston, I think he kind of profiles style-wise as like a Mike Williams. So you figure that Mike Williams is probably going to, miss 5-6 games, possibly even more, depending on it. That Johnston's going to be in that realm where he's going to get work. I would probably, though, because you're kind of waiting for that injury with Mike Williams, or, I won't say Keenan Allen, because Keenan Allen does, if he gets hurt, it doesn't really, it's not Johnston's game to be that possession, guy who works out of the slot. So, I mean, if I'm drafting, I'm taking, for a win now mentality, I'm taking Addison number 1, I'm taking Smith-Njigba number 2, and then I'm going to take Quentin Johnston.
No, and I get that logic. I really do. And I think Addison's going to be the guy that redraft players are going to prefer for sure. And again, Jerry here in the chat is kind of mentioning this too. Like he said, his favorite rookie is Quentin Johnston for the Chargers, thinks he takes over as the number 1 by next year. And that's exactly what you're saying. Like, I think he's got a long road this year to kind of find that spot to the lead receiver. But Rocky, where are you at with these 2? Are you kind of with Howard here that Addison over JSN isn't that crazy and you prefer him definitely over Quentin, or do you like QJ more?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely Addison over Johnston. I do like Johnston though. I had these guys 1, 2, 3 pre-draft, and I still have them 1, 2, 3 post-draft, in that order. JSN, Addison, Johnson. But
gotcha.
I think it's pretty clear that Addison is, barring injury, the most likely to produce a relevant season year 1. And I kind of look at him as sort of like the Olave of this class. Like everyone kind of knew Olave was probably going to be able to produce given the opportunity, and at least a decent offense. It wasn't a great offense, but so I think he has the best chance to rise in value as well as just produce, because JSN, it's wide receiver 3 touches isn't going to increase his value. I mean, I don't think he's going to decrease because he's the number 1 wide receiver in the class and everyone loves him, and then we're going to give him a second chance and all that. But Addison, I think, is going to kind of boost in value, and I've gotten my fair share of him for that reason, and because he's going to produce. Johnston, again, he's not. He doesn't seem likely. Well, I guess we can probably maybe assume a Mike Williams injury at this point.
Yeah,
at some
hate to
point,
say it.
but he doesn't seem as likely to produce year one as well. So I do think he could take over as the one by next year. I mean, Keenan Allen's going to be 31, 32.
32, I think, almost. Yeah.
32 in 2024. So I do like him a lot, and I think he has great potential. But I think just like JSM, we're going to have to wait to see it a little down the road. So I'd rather take Addison both for the production and, like I said, the value increase of the three. I think he's the most likely to increase in value because of the production.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah, and I think with the way those offenses, all three of those offenses kind of, they're not afraid to throw the ball. And like you said, Howard said it best about, Seattle. They got two big offensive weapons in this draft. You could argue they didn't need either one, right? I mean, like they really didn't need JSN, and they really didn't need Zach Charbonnet. They did fine last year without him. I would have expected them to take a different position for both of those picks, but they did. So they're clearly loading up on offense. They're going to use the guys because of the draft capital they took. So yeah, I mean, same with Addison and Johnston. I think both of those guys are going to get used too. So the next receiver on the list is Zay Flowers, and I kind of put it here, and then there's a tier break. I mean, that was sort of a question mark, but also a statement. I guess, Howard, you have wide receiver 4 as Zay Flowers, I would assume, but is there anyone else you consider in that tier, or is there anyone above him in your opinion?
I mean, listen, I don't like the landing spot here for Zay Flowers either.
It's a running theme, right?
That's kind of a tough spot to be in, and then they bring in and Odell Beckham is there, and Rashad Bateman's coming back, and I mean it's just and it's a run first scheme, so it's pretty tough. I'm probably not and I'll tell you what it is. And in all honesty, I never got bit by the college football bug. I grew up in New York City. Okay, what was I going to root for? The NYU Violets? They didn't have a team. The college I went to was Div 3, upstate New York, right? Where, everybody's like, yeah, I could have played Div 1, but I wanted the education. Bull crap. So, so that was like my college football thing. Like I never got bit by the bug. So I can sit there and look at film and see what kind of talent Zay Flowers is, but I'm not like so hyped up about him that I'm like, I'm totally in on this guy. I look at, and especially with a lot of these young wide receivers, I look at who's got opportunity. And if you've got opportunity in your first year, that's what I'm most intrigued about. So for me, I'm not even looking at Zay Flowers because I just hate the offensive scheme there for a rookie wide receiver. I'm looking at like Jalen Hyatt, in New York, because he's got the potential of being the number one guy. What does he have to leapfrog? Isaiah Hodgins? That's not, not a huge stretch for him. And then I really like Rashee Rice out of SMU because he went to Kansas City. And who's their number one guy? They've got these like interchangeable cogs in Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and they Marquez Valdez-Scantling's the guy who's going to stretch the field. Give me Rashee Rice as the deep threat in that offense, and all of a sudden I'm a little more turned on. So those are two guys who I actually like better than taking Zay Flowers. But let's also face facts, guys. We all know who the rookie wide receiver is that we want this year, and that is the person whose ADP plummets the furthest the closer we get to the season. Justin Jefferson dropped out of sight in drafts. Jamar Chase couldn't catch a football because it didn't have a white stripe.
I remember.
Last year, Garrett Wilson was going to have to deal with the Jets offense, or you could say Christian Watson with the hammy injury that knocked him off the board. So, that just goes to show you right there. So the eyeballs that I'm looking at are really on the opportunity side of things. And so those are my guys. I like Hyatt and I like Rice.
I don't blame you for either one of those. I will say that Flowers is still interesting to me just because they did change offensive coordinators. They got Todd Monken now. So I feel like that changes their game plan. They're not going to be as run heavy as they were last year. I feel like that's probably why they signed Beckham too. Like they're kind of revamping that offense. And if Monken wanted Flowers, they're going to use him, right? So I'm pretty excited about that. But still a ton of question marks. Like it's still a lot of like, man, how far do they really change this offense and this team? There is still some just bad taste in your mouth in a way, right?
Well, I mean, who's who was the last mobile quarterback that Todd Monken was using on in any offense?
Stetson Bennett, does that count? Like,
what's that?
Stetson Bennett with Georgia? Like, I don't like. It just feel like he hasn't done much recently at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like the question is Monken's gonna change up the passing attack here, but you're still looking at Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson's still a run first guy.
Yep. No, and I totally agree with you, Rocky. What are your thoughts on Flowers before we move on to the other guys?
Yeah, on Flowers, I'm on the same page with Howard tonight, man. I wasn't big on Flowers pre-draft either. I didn't think he was fine, but I mean, he did nothing to really impress me watching him. And with the Ravens offense, like even if it is more of a pass-heavy offense, which we have yet to see, but if it is. Andrews is still the pass catcher one there. And I'm not convinced Rashad Bateman still isn't going to be the better guy. I mean, to me, Rashad Bateman was the better prospect between him and Zay Flowers coming out. And he's been injured a lot over the last 2 years, and it's been a low volume offense, and we haven't gotten a lot of fantasy goodness from Rashad Bateman. But I still think he might be the priority over Zay Flowers. So at that point, we're talking about another wide receiver 3 here in a historically not great environment for fantasy wide receivers. So combine that with the fact that I didn't love him coming out, and I'm with Howard that I love taking a shot on Rice just because of the opportunity and that he's hooked up with Patrick Mahomes. Maybe it doesn't work out. It didn't work out for Sky Moore, but I do like Rice as a prospect, and again, it's just wide open opportunity there. It's basically Kelsey and a bunch of guys. So
yeah. And so just so that we're kind of clarifying a little bit here, wide receiver 5, we got Jonathan Mingo. Wasn't it Jonathan Mingo? Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's right.
Number 6, Josh Downs. Number 7, Rashee Rice. And number 8, Marvin Mims. I kind of put those in a tier. But again, this is where it really gets murky already, right? Like all of these guys have question marks. They're all landing in different situations that are, for better, for worse, not necessarily perfect, right? They're just kind of getting into what they can. And again, I totally agree with Howard on the opportunity is key for wide receivers. It's key for everybody, to be honest. But wide receivers, if you don't show out in your first year, your chances of showing out in year 2 are pretty small because they're really quick to move on. There's also so many receivers in the league anymore, right? Like if you're not producing, they'll just go find someone else somewhere else and get, a cheap undrafted free agent to fill the hole. Like if you're not working, it's not working, move on. It's really unfortunate for receivers. We see that happen all the time. But Howard, we talked a little bit about Rice. Of course, you mentioned him and Hyatt. What do you think about Downs? I know that's somebody that I'm really high on in the second round of rookie drafts, trying to make sure I leave with him. Just because he's going to Anthony Richardson's new Indianapolis Colts offense, I feel like those two could be a good rookie duo, I guess. What do you think about Downs yourself?
Yeah, I like it. He's a speedy receiver. He's a great route runner, like really clean route runner. And that's, I think, going to be very important, especially if there are concerns about Anthony Richardson's, his accuracy. And, are they going to move the chains and how are they going to do that? And so I think Downs finds himself in a great spot here, especially when you've taken Paris Campbell out of the equation. Alec Pierce is still there. And so, he'll probably challenge him in some of the shorter routes. But I think Downs is he's in a good spot. I like where you're thinking about him. Second round, who's got, a guy who's in a potentially good situation and there's not a lot blocking him.
Yeah, and I took him at like the end of the first in a 1 QB league, right? Where like those quarterbacks aren't there. It kind of boosts his value up a little bit. And I reached for him a little, but I'm just like, hey, I think he's got the highest upside and potentially the highest floor of this kind of tier of players. Just because, again, Anthony Richardson is getting a lot of buzz and he's going to be running the ball. There's Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. They got Michael Pittman, who hasn't really been a stud. I mean, there is a chance that Downs is the wide receiver 1 of this group, out of this whole group, really, and could be the only wide receiver 1 just because of the landing spot feels, I don't know, kind of ripe for the picking. Rocky, what do you think about Downs? Are you on the same page or do you disagree here?
I'm not as high on the spot, I think, as you two are. I do like Downs. I actually had him above Flowers pre-draft, but I think it's my concern about Anthony Richardson as a passer is what has me worried.
That's fair.
And he's got Michael Pittman to compete with. He's got Jonathan Taylor running a bunch of times to compete with. And I don't believe in Richardson as a passer. I could be proven wrong. I get the upside. He's super athletic, all that. And if anyone's going to get it out of him, it's probably going to be Steichen, who's worked with Herbert, who's worked with Hurts, so and gotten great production out of those two. But Hurts did take a couple years to get there, so we'll see how that goes for Downs. But I do like him of this group. I think I prefer Rice over of this like second and third tier of guys. I think I prefer Rice over Downs, but Downs would probably be second in this group for me over any of the other guys you have listed here and that we've talked about so far.
No, it's funny, Rocky. You and I have been in probably 10 or 15 drafts at this point, since the NFL draft, different rookie drafts that we've been in. And I'm pretty sure all four of these guys have gone first and fourth in this group. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen Mims go before all of them. I've seen Mingo go before all of them.
I've seen Downs last to like the 211. Yeah.
I think I saw him go 302 in a league. And I was just like, what in the world? So like, this is where that kind of, it's up to your league. It's up to your value. How do you feel about things? I mean, I've seen, Levis go at 109. I've seen Levis go at 209, right? I mean, there's just a bunch of chaos in that after that 110 kind of spot, which is just bonkersville.
I'm curious, and maybe Howard can answer this first. What you guys think of Mingo? I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of Mingo before the draft, and then he was one of the. I think he was the first wide receiver taken in the second round after the four first round guys, and there's definitely opportunity there, but he was a guy that was not quite as touted as some of these other guys. So, what do you guys thoughts on Mingo?
I actually like Mingo. I think he's talented. I think he's got a good frame. I think that, he might need to muscle up a little bit more in the NFL, but I think that he's got some really good speed. It's an intriguing landing spot, I think, in Carolina, because we're they're still kind of shifting things around. And, if you look at it and you've got, you got Thielen as your slot guy and move your chain mover. You got Chark to stretch the field. As like the Z receiver, who's your X receiver in that lineup? And, I think Mingo does have the potential of kind of taking in a little bit larger of a role. We've got to see what Bryce Young is all about in the NFL. And obviously, when you get a shorter quarterback who can't see over his linemen, then he's going to pepper the sidelines a lot more, like we see Russell Wilson do with like Jerry Jeudy or, that he used to do with like Metcalf. So I think Mingo's in a good spot. I think it's just going to, for like potential targets, it's just a matter of, whether or not Bryce Young's going to be able to get him that ball.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I think that Mingo actually does have a lot of value. I think it could be another one of those that becomes a number one receiver for his team, partially because there really just isn't one right now. But like you said, there's so much turmoil and chaos with that team right now. They're having to do a full gutted rebuild. And I think Mingo Rocky was correct. He was the first receiver taken in the second round, but he went after both Sam Laporta and Michael Mayer, which is just kind of interesting too. Like those tight ends were terrific this year and obviously got a lot of attention and all that. But I'm not entirely out on Mingo. I think I'm out at cost. I'd rather have probably all three of those other guys over Mingo myself, just because that offense could be terrible this year still. We don't know.
Right.
And again, Bryce Young, like you said, he is a little shorter. There is going to be some learning curve and how to play in the NFL and adjust to that speed. I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers are, one of those 3-14 kind of just struggling rookie year kind of teams. And again, there's another chance too, though, that they end up being really good, right? They've got Miles Sanders, they've got Adam Thielen, like they've got Hayden Hurst. It's pretty much my fantasy team from 2 years ago. And I'm telling you what, like those guys could be one of those teams that just surprises everybody. And Mingo is the wide receiver one rookie. So the range of outcomes is giant for Jonathan Mingo, which, again, I don't mind taking him at the 202, 204 kind of range, depending on who all's there. But I'm generally leaning these other guys. We didn't really talk about Mims much. Howard, do you have anything you want to talk about with Mims? Or is it kind of like he's okay, you're all right with him in Denver, and it's a busy receiver group, and it's hard to say all that? Anything else you want to get into with Mims, or be good?
That summed it up perfectly. Absolutely.
I thought so too. Yeah. Well, then let's get to the last tier here before we move to tight ends. You already mentioned Hyatt. I think we can talk about him a little bit. Jalen Hyatt is definitely somebody that I was excited to see get drafted. I liked his film, what little bit I saw of him, and I liked what people said about him. I thought he had a lot of talent. And then he goes to a team that could really use it. So maybe you seem to be higher on Hyatt than I even am. What are your thoughts on Hyatt? Do you think he goes in that tier ahead? Do you think he belongs with those other guys we just talked about?
Yeah, again, I think it's about opportunity, and and I like the fact that he's not, he's like I see him in best ball drafts now, kind of going in like the middle rounds. as far as like a dynasty receiver goes. Again, I like him, based on the opportunity, the initial opportunity here, and I'll take him higher than, a lot of these other guys simply because I see the development for this offense. I see what Brian Daboll is doing with Daniel Jones. I see what Daniel Jones is learning and taking a step ahead, as well. I'm not going to, anoint him Josh Allen light, but he's looking for that number one wide receiver to really make a difference. They brought him in. They brought in Darren Waller, which I think is a good, solid move, especially, with the way that, we've seen Daboll incorporate the tight end. So I think it's a nice spot for Hyatt, only because also, Wan'Dale Robinson, we don't know about his health and coming back. Isaiah Hodgins, fine, but was probably more like a journeyman than anything else. I never really looked at Isaiah Hodgins as like, this is going to be the number one guy. So, is Kenny Golladay? Is he alive? I don't even know if Kenny Golladay is alive.
I think he's still alive. Yeah, I'm willing to say that. Okay, I don't know what team he's on, but I'm pretty sure he's alive.
Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, or any of these names really turning you on fantasy-wise, or would you rather take that shot on Jalen Hyatt because this is opportunity knocking?
Well, I find it interesting that Tank Dell went before Jalen Hyatt, and I don't know a single person that's ranking Nathaniel Tank Dell ahead of Jalen Hyatt. Right. I feel like the landing spot in Houston for Dell was okay, or, could be good. We'll see with CJ Stroud and all that. But I'm kind of with you. I feel like Hyatt's the clear cut choice in almost every time in that kind of gap there. And it kind of covered too. We're looking at wide receiver 9 is Jaden Reed. 10 is Jalen Hyatt. 11, Cedric Tillman. 12, Keyshawn Boutte. I'm going to say it that way. And 13 was Dell, who I just mentioned. So that kind of leftover tier in a way. I mean, we talked about Hyatt there. I guess, Rocky, do you have any opinions on Hyatt or even Dell for that matter?
Not too much. Hyatt, I like, I like as a dart throw, maybe as like an early 3rd round pick. I don't really want to go for him in the 2nd. The book on him was kind of a little bit of maybe he might be better for a real NFL team than a fantasy team as sort of a speed guy. But I agree, the landing spot with the Giants, I mean, that's completely wide open there. There's like Howard said, it's just a bunch of average guys, has-beens and never was basically. Yeah. So yeah, who know? Yeah, exactly. So who knows how that's going to shake out? And Dell, I love that his name is Tank. I'll say that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something. But yeah, I mean, year 1 in Houston, I don't know who we can count on. I do like CJ Stroud a lot. To me, I liked him best of the quarterbacks in this class as a pure passer. But there's not a lot of weapons there, and I'm not banking on Tank Dell to be a significant one. So no. I think I would take Hyatt over Dell, but they're both dart throws, and I don't love either. I think it's wild a little bit that there's a 6th round wide receiver that's in this group. Just goes to show the power of of Devi players, I guess, and having a name out there, having an early good year in your career back in college, because people who were paying attention knew who Boutte was because he performed well early. But I'm not. Yeah, a 6th rounder going to the Patriots. No thanks.
Well, I mean, they had N'Keal Harry, 1st rounder, went to the Patriots and died. I think that you could almost look at this and say the same narrative could be built the other way and saying, well, they got great value in the 6th and maybe they lean on him because Bill Belichick's weird like that. Like, I'm with you. I don't have a single share of booty on any team. I don't have any Boutte or whatever we're calling him. He's not on my squad.
I'm not sure if it's Boutte or Booty.
Yeah, day 3 capital is just never good for me. I'm not a fan of that. But I do like Jaden Reed too, just kind of hit on that. I don't mind Cedric Tillman, but there's a lot of receivers in that room, and I'm just not sure about Cleveland. So I guess anything else you want to talk about, Howard, on wide receivers before we move over to the tight end group?
No, let's hit those tight ends. They're equally exciting. All right.
I love me a good tight end, let's be honest. But like the thing is, the tight end group this year was probably one of the best we've seen top to bottom. I mean, there were just so many good tight ends coming into this. And you could argue that their landing spots were a little bit more clear cut and kind of more on the way to fantasy relevancy. I think the biggest debate that I've seen is the Kincaid versus Meyer at the top. I think Dalton Kincaid obviously is a stud player and goes to a team with Josh Allen. That's never a bad thing. Like, you're always going to love Buffalo and all that. And then you got Michael Mayer, who ended up going to Las Vegas, right, and playing for the Raiders, which again has a lot of opportunity there as well. Rocky, I'll kick it to you first. Which of these two did you kind of prefer heading in, and then which did you prefer coming out of the draft, Kincaid or Mayer?
I actually kind of preferred Mayer. He's been doing it for a while now, and he's a pretty polished guy. He's also a pretty good blocker and is going to be on the field a lot. Kincaid is definitely very good. He's probably going to play, and you do want this for fantasy. He's probably going to play less in line than Mayer, but I don't. I think the landing spot's being a little overrated for him. I know people will say, well, he's not a real tight end because he's more of a big wide receiver, but tight end targets haven't been very plentiful for the Bills over the years under Josh Allen. So I have my doubts that we're going to see a lot out of him, especially early. So I lean Mayer also just because he's cheaper. Like, Kincaid is going right, like he's going 107, 108 in a lot of my rookie draft. Like, he's going sometimes over Addison or over Johnston. I don't want to pay that price. I'd rather just wait until the early, like 201, and take a Mayer or the other guy we're going to talk about in a minute here.
That's right. Yeah. And kind of the I don't know, the overarching theme I have with tight ends is they don't generally hit the ground running. So kind of back to what Howard said, the best one is the one you can get for the dip in August or even in, November or even in January of next year. I mean, we've seen a lot of tight ends come in and just kind of take a minute to adjust. And I think that Bills offense is going to be tough for Kincaid. But Howard, where are you at with these two, with Dalton Kincaid and Mayer? Which one do you prefer?
I mean, I pretty much echo the sentiments of Rocky here in the sense that, yeah, I mean, Kincaid, he might, he's not going to be as in line as Mayer is. Mayer, I think, is the more overall polished player, better blocker, and I think we're good there. The question is one of the things that we've heard constantly about the Vegas Raiders is the complexity of the offense and being able to relay it. And Josh McDaniels hasn't been able to really, take that, because he wanted to take that offense that he had with the Patriots, implant it right there in Vegas. And it's just really hasn't taken. And I've heard a lot of players talk about, just the how overcomplicated it can be. And because you've got like the quarterback, on any given play, depending on the coverage, you've got individual players reading the defensive coverage. And then in their mind, they're saying, okay, now I'm supposed to, if I see the guys over here, I'm supposed to run this route. But if he's over there, I'm going to run this route here. So they're doing that individually. The quarterback is trying to read the defenses. The defensive players are moving all over the place. So it does get really confusing. So I worry about really, is Mayer going to take to this offense, really that well? Or is he going to be, more forced into a lot more blocking assignments. So I think that the targets tend to spin towards Kincaid probably more here in year one. I think Mayer could be the guy, though, who lasts longer in the NFL as a regular tight end. I mean, again, this isn't like the old days. This is, the tight end position sucks. It's Travis Kelce and then it's nobody else.
Yep.
Every once in a while, I mean, George Kittle had one good year. Darren Waller, one good year.
Mark Andrews,
one good year. So I mean, these guys can emerge at some point, but why are we over investing in a position that in order to keep it relevant, we had to go to tight end premium.
Right.
So what's that tell you about this position? So, these guys, I'm not using my first round draft pick unless it's like a bona fide Travis Kelce coming out of college and in a great situation for that. I'm just not into it. I'm really not. And I won't use a first round pick on a tight end. I'd rather just fish through the draft.
I just want to underline that point. That's been my whole thing too, and why I think I have zero Kincaid, even though I'm in many leagues. I don't want to draft him in the first round. Like Pitts was kind of the unicorn that we were drafting in the first round, and I was okay doing that. But
and how do you feel about that, Rocky? Like
Yeah, and
right
that's
now,
not yeah.
based on his production, how do you feel about that?
It's not great. I actually, I didn't have a lot of Pitts, and in one of my leagues, I actually moved him for 3 firsts during his rookie year. So I was pretty happy about that. But, but yeah, exactly to your point though, Howard. Even Pitts, who is the amazing unicorn, all-time tight end guy, he had a good year one. Had 1,000 yards, but like what was it? 1 touchdown, and then dipped year 2. So I don't want to touch them in round 1. That's exactly like Howard said. That's why I just wanted to reemphasize that, because I do not like, but I'm all about grabbing them later in the draft and taking shots on them. But the first round pick, it's almost guaranteed to not increase in value. Like it's almost guaranteed that you're getting a dip. So I'd rather just buy them later when, they haven't performed year 1.
Well, and I think that's something I actually had mentioned before on Twitter. Like, you could spend a first round pick drafting Dalton Kincaid, or wait to see if he's worth a first round pick and trade a first round pick for Dalton Kincaid in the future. And I think I'd rather wait, because I don't know if a lot of tight ends are really going to see a value like go up from their draft position. It's almost always down. And so if I can buy them on the way down and then, kind of hold on while they're rebounding, sure. But I'd almost rather just wait till they've already rebounded and then spend that first 3 years in, it just seems like a better investment for me, which is a lot of the reason why I don't have a lot of picks this year, right? Across all my leagues, I've got probably half the amount of picks I had last year overall, which is largely because the picks were worth so much and I was able to get crazy deals on things. I'm just like, why wouldn't I take Dalvin Cook for a late first and stuff? Even if he's, getting traded and all this, I got to use Dalvin Cook all last year. You know what I mean? Like, there's some of that stuff. Like, I got points, you know what I mean? Like, that helped me out. So I think it's an interesting spot. And I kind of am echoing what you said too, Rocky. I don't have a single Kincaid. I don't have a single Mayer across all my leagues. I just don't have it, because I'd much rather take a risk on a receiver or even a running back or a trade back situation. Just not something I'm doing. I have, however, as a way to pivot, I have gotten a few shares of Sam Laporta, who was drafted 1 spot ahead of Michael Mayer. And you could argue goes to a premium spot in Detroit, where they actually have very little competition. Jameson Williams obviously got suspended for 6 games, as we all know, for gambling on a bus or something. Who knows? But the trick is Sam Laporta could be the number 2 receiving target on that offense. I don't know if you can say that about either of the other two. And that's what makes me nervous, especially at tight end. If you're not going to hit the ground running at tight end, it's going to take a while to regain your value. Sam Laporta, if you take him in the second, which is kind of where he's going in that early second round spot, that to me is the value of the draft, right? He could be a stud right out of the gate and you could flip him for a first. Now you're making profit. The other guys, I just don't see it. But Howard, where are you at with Sam Laporta? Do you like his landing spot as much as I do?
I mean, it is a great landing spot, no doubt about it. And last year we saw Brock Wright get involved a little bit more heavily down the stretch. The suspension to Williams is the big one right there, because they lost DJ Chark in free agency. Guys like Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, these guys don't do very much for us. I think, the one issue that will probably cut into some of Sam Laporta's work is the fact that they paid money to have David Montgomery on the roster and then drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, yes, you can move Gibbs to the slot, which then I guess, pushes Amon-Ra St. Brown to the outside. So, there is that aspect of it that kind of gets a little questionable. But yes, out of all 3 of these tight ends, the one who has the biggest potential to step up and be the number 2 target is Laporta. Of course, it's still Jared Goff throwing him the football.
Well, I mean, everybody loves to hate on Goff, but he did pretty well last year. And I'm not sure the team is excited to move away from him. They got Hendon Hooker, right? Or did he go to LA?
Yeah, no,
they got
Hendon Hooker. Yeah,
they got Hendon Hooker, right? I keep thinking of LA with Goff. It always throws me off. But yeah, they got Hendon Hooker, which I think will be the heir apparent there. And I'm not 100% sold that he is the guy. He feels more like a Kyle Trask kind of quarterback to me, like someone who's just like, yeah, I guess I'll put him on my bench and see what happens, but it never really happens. Not even this year with Baker Mayfield. But I'm not that worried about Goff. I don't think I'm that, terrified of that. But Rocky, where are you at with Laporta? I know you wanted to chime in here for sure.
No, I didn't really have that much to add. I was just going to agree with you guys. Like the landing spot's great. I do think that, and Howard kind of alluded to this. I do think while Williams is out, Jahmyr Gibbs could actually end up being the second receiving option there. But Laporta definitely has a chance to kind of boom in the first month or two while Williams is suspended, and then he has to come back, and he's, he barely played with the team since he's been drafted. So there's a lot of adjustment there. And I don't mind it, but I still think I prefer the other two over Laporta, despite the great landing spot. But again, he's another guy I don't mind taking in there the early second there.
Yeah, and then there are other tight ends. Of course, we talked about how good the class was, but for fantasy, and again, because as you said too, Howard, tight ends suck. There's just some of these guys I'm not terribly excited about for fantasy, right? They might be terrific tight ends and be amazing NFL tight ends, but for fantasy, you got to really be a standout guy to make it worth your while. So we had Musgrave, Washington, Schoonmaker, Kraft, and I put Strange in here because for me, Strange is one of those like fourth round picks, put him on the team because honestly, like he's playing in Jacksonville. He's the second tight end behind Evan Ingram, but Ingram's contract ends after this year and we don't know where he's going to go. I don't think he stays. And if we're looking at this, like it's a long-term process with tight ends, I think Strange is someone that I'm fine to put on my bench or my taxi squad and just kind of ride it out and see how he goes. But Howard, are there any of these other tight ends you're even somewhat excited about taking in rookie drafts right now?
No, I'm not excited about any of them, to be honest.
Hashtag analysis. There you go. That's brilliant. You said it all.
Musgrave and Kraft, they're competing with each other. I don't know.
Right.
Flip a coin. Musgrave has more is the more talented player, so we're told. Darnell Washington landed in Pittsburgh behind Freiermuth, and I don't really necessarily know what kind of work he's going to get. Schoonmaker in Dallas with competing with Hendershot and Ferguson. No, this is not a group of tight ends who interest me. I'd rather just wait until somebody drops Austin Hooper and just add him to my roster.
Agreed. Yeah, especially with tight end. If you're not getting one of the top ones, it doesn't matter, right? Like, there's not a ton of value here. Rocky, you got anything you want to chime in on, on these tight ends before we move on?
I will say in general, I like to after the first round and there's kind of certain guys you want to go for. I generally like them round 2 to 4 is mainly to focus on tight ends and especially after the second half of the first round, second round on to round 4. I like to shoot for tight ends and running backs because tight ends, you're getting them cheaper. I'm fine with that. And a lot of these guys got good draft capital and they're pretty athletic, which is a big indicator for tight ends. A lot of these guys have RAS scores, relative athletic scores above 9 and got decent draft capital. So I'm not like Howard. I'm not loving like any of these guys in particular, but I like taking shots on each of them and just seeing what happens. And maybe one of them pops as they sit on the end of my roster in 2 to 3 years. So I don't really have a preference for any of them. I don't want Washington at all because of the Freiermuth thing. But
he was already going to be a long shot for targets anyway. He's more of a blocking tight end. Yeah.
Well, but he's so fast. He ran so fast in the combine. He's so fast, guys. He's so fast. He's so big. He's so fast.
He's so big. He can catch anything in the red zone. Yeah, but it's Kenny Pickett, so I'm not really that worried. Speaking of Goff, I'm not a big Pickett fan. And I think, too, just Corey's putting it here, actually, give me David Njoku over any of them, right? Like, we've already got a bunch of these like kind of questionable tight ends, and you got Chigunkanku. Like, there's a bunch of these guys that are kind of rising up from the last few years. I'd much rather take one of these tight ends that's already kind of progressed a little bit than even bother with any of these guys. So
I will say though, most of these guys you can get for like a 3rd round dynasty pick.
Yeah, but you can get them on waivers next year. You know what I mean? Like honestly, like these I don't believe any of these. Well, the second tier, 3rd tier, whatever you want to call it, like this last group, I don't think any of them are really going to be on a lot of rosters come October. Right when you start to have injuries, and maybe you don't have IR slots like safe leagues with Scott Fish and all that. Like there's no IR spots that I'm not going to drop. Breece Hall like it last year, like Breece Hall got injured. I'm not going to drop a guy like that. So you just end up having to scrape the wire. And I just think that these guys are all going to end up on waiver wires, much like we saw with guys like Isaiah Likely and like all these other tight ends from years past, right? Like it's just, I'm not really that excited about it. So before we move on, there was a good question I wanted to bring up here from Jerry in the chat. He had a trade question. He said, I have a trade question for you guys for a contender, Hurts or Trey Lance, the 2023 102 and 2 late 2024 firsts. QBs right now are Hurts, Dak, and Jimmy G. And if you take the trade, who would you go after with the 102? And Howard, I'll kind of kick it to you. I know it's sort of on the spot, but which side of this trade do you like, the Hurts side or the package side? I mean, it's Hurts for Lance and 3 firsts.
Yeah.
And 102 is one of them. So you kind of get some immediate production back. I mean, and Lance could be the guy, right? Like that's a pretty heavy package for Hurts.
It is a pretty heavy package for Hurts, but for the same token, though, I don't really. I mean, he's got Dak and Jimmy G. I'm not gonna, hang with Jimmy G, by any stretch. And Dak is, he's not the Dak that we used to know. He doesn't run the ball. He doesn't run the football as much as he used to, and so I think that kind of tears it down. And again, we're sitting here and we're looking at these picks, being like, oh, well, these for dynasty first round picks. Who's he going to take at the 1-2? Bijan's going number 1, right? In any league.
Even in Superflex, I don't think anybody's disagreeing there. Yep.
So Bijan's number 1. So, in a Superflex, or, are you taking any of these QBs over Jahmyr Gibbs? No, probably not. And, are you going to take one of them over Smith-Njigba? No. So, what do I want at the 1-2? I'll take Gibbs. But I'd rather just make sure that I have Hurts as my QB and lock that down.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Rocky, which side are you on before I give my total answer here?
Yeah, that's a tough call for me. That is a lot for Hurts.
A big package, yeah.
That's a lot, yeah. That's a big package. That's what she said.
But I might take the package, although I love Hurts, not just because I'm an Eagles fan.
No,
just as a fantasy option. But and I don't hate the idea of actually not taking the quarterback at 102 and then maybe using those 24 first to replace Hurts with somebody or something like that. But at 102, if I'm going to take a quarterback, I'd probably lean Bryce Young over the other two, just because I'd rather get a guy then that I think has better chance of production early on if I'm trading Hurts away. So he did ask, I think he did ask, who would you go with it at 102? Yeah. So I think I would take it just because it does seem a lot of value to me. And I am more of a Trey Lance truther than most. I believe he is going to be the starter this year. I believe just the same way everyone believes Anthony Richardson is just this great prospect, even though he hasn't shown a lot in college passing the ball. Trey Lance has those legs too. So if he can stay healthy, even if he's not a great passer, he's probably going to be a decent fantasy producer for you. So I mean, you still have Lance, Prescott, Garoppolo, and I think you can make it work with those firsts to kind of, add some other stuff to your team to hopefully make up for the loss of Hurts.
And I'll be kind of brief because we're going to get into Find Me a Trade and do this a whole different way for this league. But I think if you're a contender, you keep Hurts. I just don't see a reason to move on for picks if you're contending. Like, isn't that the whole point? Like, if you're contending, don't you want the points? You don't necessarily need the picks in the bank. I would be more happy with sending like Dak for the 102 and a 24 first, right? Like kind of pivot that direction so that you can get Anthony Richardson at 102. And then you have Hurts and Richardson. That feel a lot better about that than I do about, Garoppolo, Dak, and Richardson. Like, I'd much rather keep Hurts.
I don't know if you're getting that for Dak.
I'm just saying, maybe you get Lance in the first.
No, but give me the 2024 picks for Dak.
Yeah.
Give me that. I'll take that. Sure.
Yeah. Something like that. I think there's a better trade where you can keep Hurts. And again, we don't know the league. We say this every time. And as a perfect segue to our Find Me a Trade segment, because again, we appreciate you asking that question in the chat, Jerry. Anybody who wants to come ask questions live, feel free. We go live pretty much every Thursday around 9:30ish because it's a good time to do that. But without further ado, we've got our official Find Me a Trade of the week. Let's get into it.
Find me a trade.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to start this one out. This is submitted by Jeremy Hayes at Coach Hayes 7 on Twitter. It is an MFL league. You're welcome, Rocky. I'm glad that we got one of these for you. We get a lot of sleeper leagues, Howard, and they're a lot harder to do, as you might imagine. It's just you have to log in. It's really annoying. Anyway, this is a safe leagues, like we were talking about earlier. Safe Leagues Dynasty 201 with the Superflex and tight end. Team name Man U. Love that. Good soccer team there. 12-team PPR 2.0 tight end premium. So additional 1 for tight ends. QBs get 6 points for touchdowns, -4 for interceptions. Classic Safe League starting lineup. Start 10. It's a QB, 2 running back, 3 receiver, tight end, 2 flex, and the super flex. Steven's thoughts here. And I think this is interesting. He gave us a lot of good info. So I didn't really pay attention much to it in my trade, which we'll get into. But 3 of the 4 years he's been a champion in a Safe League, looking to prolong his dynasty. Oh, wouldn't that be great? Just keep it going. Just paired Josh Allen with Mahomes this last season. I'm in a really good spot to compete again this year. considered moving Pollard before the draft. Their draft takes place in June in the safe leagues. I'm not sure how that worked out, but that's kind of nice. He has the 108 this year and 2 firsts next year and a bunch of picks. Made some moves this offseason for 24 capital to sustain success. Kelsey owner wants to keep Kelsey, unfortunately, but he could use some tight end depth or upgrade from Kittle and Muth. And he says, thanks, of course. Do you want to bring up the team, Rocky, or do you want me to do that? I didn't ask before. I have it here if you want me.
If you want to share it on the screen, I can read off the roster while you're doing that.
Okay, perfect. Give me just a second. Make sure I find the right team.
Sorry about that, Andrew. I didn't have it.
Oh, no, I totally forgot to ask. I usually do.
I have it, but I'm not as great as doing the share screen thing. So I thought maybe
no worries.
You would do it.
No worries. We're okay.
Okay, let me start reading the roster. He's got Josh Allen. He's got Patrick Mahomes, as he said. He's also got Jordan Love as his QB3 and Brock Purdy, who has starting potential. Other than that, there's not really much at the quarterback position. Running back, he's got Pollard, he's got McCaffrey, he's got Eckler, he's got Breece Hall. So a lot of high-end talent and depth there. Also, Samaje Perine, Cordero Patterson. Wide receiver, his top 4 guys are Debo, Keenan, Tyreek, and Christian Kirk. He's also got Wan'Dale Robinson, and then it's mostly roster fillers. And then at tight end, I disagree with what he was saying about tight end. I think he actually has some tight end depth here.
Yeah.
And it looks like they did have their rookie draft.
I see that now too. He's got some rookies there. I thought he said it was in June, so I must have misunderstood.
He's got
Dalton Kincaid. He was saying that the guy with Kelsey has no tight end depth. I was like,
okay,
for that. But I mean, again, if that dude's not going to trade Kelsey, then really, are you, is that if that's the move that you want to do, that you want to just like dump off a tight end for like, I don't know, a receiver or something, that's a minor deal. That's easy to pull off. I was like trying to like look at his roster with, everything else that he had in there, but what he said that he needed.
Why don't you get into yours first then, Howard? Yeah, go ahead and get into your trade. This is the perfect time. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, again, I told you my wife's going to kill me if I'm not at the dinner table in a couple of minutes there. So
yeah,
we're good.
Listen, so I just, that's kind of why I went with this, and I wrote this down for him. I'd be inclined to actually deal either Eckler or McCaffrey than Tony Pollard, because it keeps you younger, but you'll also get much more in return for a team that's sitting in like a win now mode. And that's kind of where I was at. I said, say goodbye to Gronk. I don't even know why he's on your roster. The tight end situation that he's got great tight end depth. He can turn over, trade one of them. But, I said, why don't you trade somebody like McCaffrey for like CeeDee Lamb and Javonte Williams, right? We don't know what's going on with Javonte Williams, but, you don't need Williams immediately to start the season. And he's young enough, and we'll see what happens with him when he recovers from, his ACL fully. But it gives you that young wide receiver one that his team needs. So I would say go to MSD and offer him McCaffrey. See if you can get Lamb and Javonte. And, if you don't think that that's even enough for McCaffrey, tell him to throw in a pick.
I love it. And I think, too, the other kind of context, MSD is over the roster limit. So he would probably prefer a consolidation trade anyway, right? He's going to have to start cutting players. So I think that makes total sense. Howard, do you have the ability to stick around for 5 more minutes while we run through our trades? Or are you okay?
She's going to kill me. She's going to kill me.
We can let
give
him,
her my
we
address.
Can let him go. We can let him go.
If you want to head out, Howard,
we'll finish up
with
the two of us, Andrew.
But tell people where they can find you and where they can hear your voice every day.
I appreciate that, guys. And my wife will appreciate you. You guys will each get a follow from at DoobieJSF. You guys can find me on Twitter here at RotoBuzzGuy. You can hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. If you live in New York, I write for the New York Post. You can catch my columns over there on Saturdays for fantasy and all over the place at fantasyalarm.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Howard. We appreciate your time.
Now, appreciate you having you.
Thank you so much, guys. And again, she'll be very, very happy. Appreciate
Tell her we said hi.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, sir. Yeah. All right, perfect. So again, Howard, big fan. Obviously, we got to get him in and out. So, Rocky, do you want to get into your trade next or talk about Howard's before you get into that, I guess? What do you want to do there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll finish up with Howard's real quick. I like it a lot if you can get it done. I do wonder if you can if you can get Lamb and Javonte. Javonte has dipped, with the injury, and we're still not sure when he's going to be ready. It might be asking a little much, but
I think you could add to McCaffrey to get that, though. I was going to say the same. Like, you might be able to add one of those tight ends that you're full of. You might be able to add Kincaid and get that done. I wouldn't be against that. Something like that. You might be able to swing depending on what the other guy likes. That's one of those trades too, where I'd send one or two different versions and just be like, hey, pick which one you like, or let me know if you have a counter specifically. But again, MSD, he's got some tight ends that are, I don't know, not great. Irv Smith, which is a fun name now. Zach Ertz, Albert O, like just tight ends that are just not really wowing you, and you've got plenty. So if you have to add someone like that, even the Dalton Schultz, who plays for Houston now, I'd be fine to add Dalton Schultz to that trade if he gets it done. So yeah, I kind of wanted to comment on that too. So that was, again, I think that's the right move though, is move McCaffrey. I like that. But what was your trade? And then I'll get to mine on the end because it doesn't really follow suit.
I actually did try and look for McCaffrey trade, and maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I couldn't find anything I really liked that I thought matched up well enough. But I think we all kind of had the same general idea in terms of maybe kind of boosting his receiver core a little bit, because it's not bad. I mean, he's got Tyreek Hill.
No.
Keenan Allen should probably produce at least pretty nicely, at least one more year. And Debo's no slouch, but I just like the idea of trying to upgrade there. You do have to start 3.
Exactly.
And he's basically only got 4
Right.
when you throw Kirk in there.
Wandale, maybe the 5th, right? I'm not excited about starting Wandale. Yeah,
No.
I'm with you.
But so what I did, and again, we've also talked about the tight end depth. So I did trying to trade one of those tight ends plus to kind of upgrade at receiver for him. And what I did was Pat Freiermuth, and I said maybe the 2 highest, it's hard to gauge this far out, but the 2 highest looking 24 seconds to the team, Plymouth Flurry for Stephon Diggs. Just for the record, I wasn't sure how that matched up value-wise. I don't know if I was undervaluing Diggs, overvaluing Freiermuth. I will say, though, I wanted to point this out, 2.0 premium. I mean, that
Yes.
boosts them even more than regular tight end premium. Like in that format, tight end should be gold. And he's got 2 really, a good young one, a good older one, the best rookie or the highest drafted rookie in this class, and then a usable guy in Schultz. So he's got a lot going on there, and that should be able to get you a decent amount in return. And I did put it into the DTC and DLF. One had it as an overpay, one had it as underpay. So I figured it was a decent trade when I see that.
That's way to use calculators. So DTC's got Diggs and Freiermuth only off by 1 24-second.
Yeah.
So adding
exactly.
2 seconds could make it, sweeten the deal a little bit. But also you could argue the DTC doesn't have the 2.0 standard premium on that.
Exactly.
And maybe that is closer than that too. So, I mean, Diggs is 29. It depends on your roster and how you want to build this. But I could easily see Freiermuth for Diggs almost straight up in a 2.0 league like this. I don't think that gets done without the second, but I would offer it that way and kind of see what.
Yeah, I'd be fine starting with 1 second and upping it to another second. Between the draft assets he already has and the fact that he's got 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 titles in the books already, I'm fine not worrying about gaining youth and trading youth away here in Freiermuth. And getting an older guy. I'd rather make it 4 out of 5, and then I'll worry about that next year. But again, next year, even if this trade exactly as I put it, he'd still have 2 firsts and 2 seconds next year.
Right.
And possibly a 4th title in his pocket. So, and Plymouth Flurry has kind of I don't know for sure if he's trying to rebuild, but he should be. He's got basically like 1 older guy at each position. Pretty much, other than tight end, he's got like nothing at tight end, but he's got Diggs, he's got Aaron Jones, he's got Kirk Cousins, and almost everyone else on his roster is fairly young. So I think he's probably mid kind of rebuild here, and might be enticed to do this, especially like I said, he's got nothing at tight end. He gets Freiermuth, and he gets a couple extra picks, and I think it's a decent return for Diggs for a guy who's going to be 30. And I think it helps both teams. So what do you think, Andrew?
I like it. And I think something that needs to be said here too, in 2.0 leagues, having 3 starting tight ends is killer. You can put all 3 of them in your lineup with those.
That is
flexes.
true.
So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? My trade was more on the side of, well, we're playing with house money. Let's go have some fun, right? Let's make a wild trade. Let's get a little squirrely on this. He said he just traded for Josh Allen. And man, I'm telling you what, having Allen and Mahomes on the same team does feel good when you're clicking those lineups. I get it. But I would want to go get like the 101, like go get an asset that you just, that is going to hold value, is going to be a stud for your team. And I think outside of the super flex position, for me, that's Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. The Chase manager, I really didn't see that they had a lot of quarterbacks that you could make a trade with. But my thought here was, let's see if we can send Josh Allen away, even though it probably just got him. Send Josh Allen to the team that was, I think it's called the Truth Hurts. There you go. Send Josh Allen to the Truth Hurts for Daniel Jones and Justin Jefferson. So you still get a quarterback back that's still startable. He's an obvious QB2. But now your wide receiver room gets a big boost, right? And now you could argue that the points that you're getting from Jones and Jefferson are about the same as Allen. If you're contending, you should consolidate. I get all the logic. But also, if you've won 3 out of the last 4 years, let's just blow this up a little bit. Let's kind of pivot a little bit. Let's see what we can do and catch some fire. But I think having Daniel Jones, I'm not afraid of in my super flex this year, even though we just talked about how bad the receivers are. He did pretty well with no names last year. They added Waller. I think Barkley's still going to get some. There's a chance Wandale steps up. Obviously, we talked about Hyatt. There's plenty of options, even if we don't have a stud. But I would want to get something like a Chase or Jefferson on this team and just kind of lock that in a little bit. It goes against what he was saying, but I don't know. It's kind of where I went. And then also, I feel like the running back room is pretty good for a win now team. I don't think you need to make any moves.
Agreed.
I mean, when you've got Eckler, you've got McCaffrey, you've got Pollard, and then who was the other one he had? Brees Hall,
yeah.
right? So he's got a stud running back room. I would kind of keep that intact with the way running backs get hurt and the cliffs that you're having on that. I would wait till next year to try to move Eckler or maybe mid-season McCaffrey, something like that. I wouldn't touch that running back room. I think that's terrific. And I also wouldn't touch the tight end room. I think that's terrific. So for me, the only two options that felt right to me was moving quarterback and splitting up a quarterback for a receiver quarterback combo. What do you think about that one, Rocky? Am I on the right page, or is that just too crazy to work?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that there's not a lot he needs to do here. I just kind of struggled to find any trade because I don't think there's a lot he really needs to do, especially since he already has a bunch of draft capital next year for his 24 draft. Yep. I mean, I'd be fine leaving quarterback alone too, but you know me, I don't mind trading down from quarterback, especially if I also already have a Mahomes. I'm fine trading down from an elite quarterback, especially if you can get an elite asset back like Justin Jefferson.
Right.
I kind of love that. I mean, Daniel Jones, I'm not super high on him, but he was a QB1 last year, and he did that, as Howard mentioned earlier in the show, with the likes of Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James and not much else. So if he keeps the running ability, he kind of increased his rushing from, he's always been a decent running quarterback, but he kind of increased it last year, I think, to his most yards in his career. If he can keep that up, and he's got some, added Hyatt as a weapon, added Waller as a weapon, he could probably stay in that low end QB1 range, as long as the rushing numbers are there. So, and I love getting Justin Jefferson, and that if you're going to trade Josh Allen, you have to get something like Justin Jefferson back.
Well, and as the name implies, the Truth Hurts has Hurts, right? So that guy would be getting Hurts and Allen. That's
which could be appealing.
My eyebrows are going up. That could be nice. Now his other receivers, he's got AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, and some scrubs. So he would have to make some more trades here. Yeah, but it's sort of like if I had Justin Jefferson, that would be the kind of trade that if I got at my inbox, I'd sit there and go, "You want me to give up Jefferson and Daniel Jones, who you said at question marks, for Josh Allen? Wait a minute now. It's not terrible. I would probably counter and add a piece to the Josh Allen side. He's got a ton of picks. Maybe you throw in a second to get it done, right? Seconds get deals done all the time. I'd be totally fine with that. I wouldn't want to add a first. I don't think you had to add that much to this. You can add like a Dalton Schultz or something.
I was just going to say, you can have one of the lower end.
I'm fine with that, right? But I think the bones of this are pretty solid, where it's Allen plus for Jefferson plus. I like that. And then make the pluses whatever you want. The other quarterbacks on this guy's team, though, are not great. You got Sam Darnold, Sam Howell, Daniel Jones, we talked about, Gardner Minshew, Kyle Trask, and Mike White. So there is a chance that this guy's looking at it like, well, I don't like my QB2. Maybe that's a massive upgrade. It leaves him weak running or receiver. I'm sorry. So maybe you send one of those other quarterbacks on your bench and you kind of make it happen. But anyway, my thought there was I
Yeah.
just want a 101 on my team. That sounds like a good way to keep going with the dynasty.
And if you don't have a real QB3, I don't count Sam Howell as a real QB3.
I
It's
don't
great
either.
to have Hurts and Allen. Like, you're never benching those guys unless, you know, a bye or an injury. So,
Well, and you kind of said this too with Jeremy's team, Man U, right? He's got Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen, but behind him he's got Jordan Love and Brock Purdy, which could both be starters. So
yeah.
I don't mind tearing down from Allen or Mahomes. I guess I'd rather keep Mahomes just because he's such a dominant beast. But there is still some value and some logic in keeping him on the same roster. But breaking it up seems like a fun idea to me.
Yeah, and which, by the way, I just wanted to give a shout out. Jeremy is in Dynasty Junkies 3, so just want to give a shout out there, the listener league. And before we finish up, Andrew, I did. Corey had a couple questions in the chat here, I believe. I'm trying to find the first one.
We answered his first one, but this is the second one that came in, right?
Is.
Which I guess the first one was Jerry's, but yeah, 10-team Superflex and a bit of a rebuild. My buddy is holding my 24 first hostage. Oh, that's brutal. And that has happened to me a few times. It's like, man, I just want to rebuild. Give me my pick. He says he offered him Waddle for Judy, my 24 first, and another 24 first. So if you're offering Waddle for that package, which side would you rather have there, Rocky?
I'd rather have the side he's getting. I don't know if I'd pay that for Waddle, even though I love Waddle.
It's a 10-team Superflex. I feel like that changes it a little bit because
it does. Because studs matter more.
Studs.
Yeah,
you know? I could see the other guy too. If the other guy's contending, I could see this being like, you know what, picks are picks. I'll take Waddle and lock it in, right?
And it affects. And I don't. He said a bit of a rebuild, so I don't know if his 24 first is going to be the 101 or not. But it does even affect the fact that, like, Caleb Williams isn't as valuable in a 10-team Superflex either.
Well, so it's funny too because we get the live updates from Corey in a sense here. He goes, "Well, do you think that's too much, or would you take it?" And he goes, "I know Rocky hates Judy," and then he says, "Never mind, he countered something way worse." So okay, so it's over anyway. Okay. But then his second of the three, I guess, second trade for Corey, which we'll get into because that one kind of went a different way. But another team, another league, he said offered another trade, 12-team Superflex 1.5 premium. He has Waller and Hawkinson. Would you flip Hawkinson for Judy? I'm going to say no. I'd rather keep Hawkinson than Judy. And as a Judy hater, Rocky, where are you at on that one?
Oh yeah, I'm not as much of a hater as I used to be. I don't have take lock, and he did produce down the stretch last year, and he clearly outproduced Sutton. My whole thing was Sutton over Judy, and when both were healthy, Judy outproduced Sutton. I'm not blind to that. So I don't hate Judy. I never hated Judy to begin with. I just thought he was overvalued. He did not produce the first 2 years. He did not have either year did he average over 10 fantasy points per game. He was single digits. So
well, don't hate the player, hate the value, right? Like I agree with you. I don't hate the player. I just hated the overvaluation of him. I was kind of with you. I always thought he was a little bit overhyped. And I've definitely made some trades that I regretted after, a year or so.
and last year, it's not like he was amazing, but he definitely showed improvement in terms of his production in an environment that wasn't that great for production because Russell Wilson did not have a good year. So with Peyton there, I haven't really gone out and bought Judy a lot, but I actually think I did once or twice. I think I have now like 2 Judy shares as opposed to the 0 I had before.
You're not a hater 2023. Anymore.
Yeah.
That's the rules.
So, but all that said, I'd still rather have Hawk because I'm a Hawk truther. So
yeah,
and
I'd rather have Hawk.
I still think he's going to produce well there, even with Addison coming in. I still think it's possible. I mean, we did talk about Addison probably being the best producer of the rookie class. I still think it's possible that the second most targets go to Hawk. So if not, I think it'll be close.
I don't think that's the case, but I'd rather have Hawk with the third targets and a tight end premium than Judy, who could be the third target in a receiver class that you've got plenty of receivers in almost every league. You don't need them.
It's close, though. I would take
Hawk. It's not terrible. Keep us posted, Corey. Tag us on Twitter and all that jazz. Appreciate you coming in the chat here, of course. So one thing I did want to do before we signed off, this is the week of the eliminators. I know I'm in 7 drafts, I think, at the moment, which is just crazy, and I almost regret it, but it's for charity, so it's a good cause. We have a Junkies one. I've got 2 of my own, so I'm definitely, pulling a lot of duties there, helping set them up and everything too, which is kind of fun on the back end. But yeah, we appreciate everybody jumping in the Junkies one. The chat's already having a lot of fun, and I kind of took the reins of it to start with and drafted 3 players, 1 from each of our teams, just so that we all have somebody we can kind of root for. was a terrible draft, and I can't wait to see how it goes. But we got AJ Brown at 111. I took Evan McPherson at 208 because kickers still matter, and I just wanted a Bengal. There was none left really. And then DJ Moore at 308. So we've got one of each of our teams in the first 3 picks. After that, I went Mac Jones and Joe Mixon, who is still there. And then we're coming up at 611 here shortly, which actually we might be on the clock. Yeah, perfect. We're on the clock. So, Rocky, do you want to make this pick with me live while we're here? Since we don't have a lot of these, and this could be kind of fun, I could tell you who I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say, who are the best available? I don't have.
Well, here, so I don't know. It's, again, ADP is all wonky right now, and ranks are all wonky. But in terms of ranks, for receiver, we've got Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, Drake London, Jacoby Myers. I like Drake London there. Running back, we got Rashad White, Cam Akers, Javonte Williams, David Montgomery. Quarterbacks, real bleak, which is why I got Mac Jones. But we got Gardner Minshew, Tyler Huntley, Davis Mills. Like, just nobody maybe Andy Dalton could be an interesting flyer. And then tight end, we got Evan Ingram, Dawson Knox, Juwan Johnson, David Njoku. Like, I don't know.
I feel like there's a clear guy from all the guys you said there, and it's funny because he's another guy I'm a hater of, but he's got the most upside of all those guys, and that's Drake London.
Agreed. I think it's got to be Drake London. That's who I was leaning on anyway. So I'm taking it. Drake London is the pick, and hopefully he's the wide receiver 1, and we get some points. I don't know. It's for charity. It doesn't really matter.
It's fun.
It's a fun time. So yeah, with that though, we are going to get out of here. Obviously, we appreciated Howard's time. I know he only had an hour, and we wanted to make sure we at least got to find me a trade, hence the hustle. But we appreciate you sticking through and after us, even though Howard's not here. I know that was the get, and he's an amazing dude. We love Howard.
Yeah.
But anything else you want to cover, Rocky, I guess, before we sign in for the night?
No, I guess I'll just finish up here. I guess should we do all our stuff before I take us out? Okay.
Well, I'll do the stuff and you can kick us out of here.
Okay.
So obviously you can find me on Twitter at Andrew Hall FF, Rocky at Dynasty FF Addict. Scott isn't here, so he doesn't get his name. That's the rules. You can find us live streaming on Thursdays at the DAP Network on Twitter at DAP_network. We're also live streaming now on the Dynasty Junkies handle. Find us on YouTube. This is always going to be replayed. If you're ever looking for the podcast and it's not in the feed, it's because Rocky hasn't uploaded it yet. But you can always go to YouTube and find it on the DAP.
I'm going to get it up by tomorrow. I promise, Andrew. I've been
take your time.
I delay on that so much now. I'm so lazy.
Take your time. It's part of the fun of the show. But no, you can always find it on YouTube. If you're really jonesing on Friday, you can always go on YouTube and catch it on there. I know a lot of people do that. Or go to Twitter. It'll be on the replay on the feed as well. You can always catch it there. And then, of course, once it is uploaded, it'll be on your feeds on the podcast. You can always catch that too. But definitely, that's why it's worth subscribing, rating, and reviewing, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you're following us on the DAP Network everywhere you can. And make sure you give us some feedback. Obviously, we got a lot of leagues running. We got a lot of FC eliminators going right now. We got rookie drafts. Send us messages. Let us know if you need help. Tag us in polls, all that kind of stuff. But with that, Rocky, I'll let you take us out of here.
Yeah, I want to give it another shout out, another thanks to Howard. It was great having him on here. Appreciate him taking his time to come on the pod, and shout out to him for knowing the Estonium in the Dynasty Junkies logo.
That was nice.
Yeah, I didn't even
before
know
the show, but that was great. He named the sodium and Estonium as our logo.
Yeah. I knew it, and he was sodium. I never knew what the other one was. I didn't make the logo, so. But also shout out to the chat as always. Puff Pass Kick, Jerry Bag, Shaw Corey, all in there, all talking and asking questions. That was great to see. And don't forget, next week, all 3 of us will be on. Find Me a Trade Spectacular. We'll clear out some of these Find Me a Trade. So make sure you're sending some in. You can send them to any of our Twitter handles, me, Andrew, Scott, or the Junkies handle that we gave earlier. So, and
it's in the pin post on our handle and all
that's
that. You
right.
can always just submit the link. We'll send you the link if you DM us. That's perfectly fine.
If you go to Dynasty Junkies, the pin tweet is our link tree still correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so you can go in there, and it has in the link tree. It does have the submission form. So, good stuff. Make sure, since we're going to be doing a bunch of them next week, we want to get a bunch more in. So make sure you're doing that, and that'll do it for this week. Until our spectacular Find Me a Trade next week. Junkies out.